Hello, everyone. This is Amanda Sanchez of Queens Redeemed, and I am here with you all for another wonderful interview for the Women of Influence Finance edition. And so I'm so excited to bring today's guest on this Small Business Saturday. I have here today Anna Murphy. She is the CEO of Murphy and Associates Consulting, and that's just one of the many things that she does. But just to share a little bit about Anna, she is a longtime friend, sister, and mentor of mine. We've known each other for about 5 years now, and can I say, have seen her firsthand grow personally and professionally from every area of her life. And I absolutely adore this woman. And I've been learning so much about business from her. And her primary business right now is bookkeeping and accounting. And when I say for all those startup businesses, boy, it is a lot of information to try to figure out and handle. And so when I've been learning this process, I'm like, there's so many questions that come to mind. So if I know if I have questions, I know you have questions. And so we're going to talk a little bit about business, startups, some of the things to have in place, a little bit about entrepreneurship. And we're going to just go ahead and take this already. And so if you are following on Facebook, be sure to like and follow the pages that yeah, for Anna and myself, or if you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. We're going to definitely bring more. And so, Anna, do we have you on the line here with us?
Yes, yes. Can you hear me?
I can. Thank you so much for being here and taking time out. I know this is a very busy time for you and your clients who are kind of going a little mad with the government relief programs right now. So thank you for carving out some time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So I wanted to see, start with, can you share a little bit, because you have an eclectic background, can you share a little bit about yourself and your background right now?
Yep. So, long story short, I've been in the accounting and finance space now for, wow, probably going on 12 years, a really long time. Didn't start there, but when the economy crashed back in 2008 and 2009, I realized that um, I needed to learn about money and that I wanted to be in a recession proof industry. And certain sectors of the finance industry are, provide that. So, anywho, did the whole school, got the good job, was in management in corporate America in several different positions, and kind of quickly realized that, man, unless I, you know, really kiss some tail in corporate, I'm not really going to be able to get to where I want to be able to go. And I didn't like a lot of the restrictions that, most employees have in place of, having to be at work, from certain time frame and then only getting certain vacation days and all that stuff, right? And so I kind of got tired of that really quick and realized that the best way for me to be able to control my time and my income was to be able to build a business. And so building a business has always been the goal from the beginning. And, like most of us were told to go to school and get the job. So I did that. Yeah, I got my master's in finance and marketing, with the assumption that it would help me learn business. And it did to a certain extent, more for like a corporate background, but
Okay.
not from the aspect of actually building it from the ground up, if that makes sense, like as a startup from the ground up. So I did that, and then got married. And when I got pregnant with my little guy, who's now 6,
Mhm.
I just had a huge desire to want to be able to be more involved as a mom and be able to have the freedom of when and how I do that. And so
Mm.
that's really when the desire really kicked in full force. Um,
Mhm.
I do have a 16-year-old as well. So with him, when I was raising him, I was a single mom at the time, and I, went was working and going to school literally all day for like 5 years straight. So
Mhm.
for the first 5 years, it was just more of like surviving to make sure that I can, provide for him. And then now with my second child, it's beyond the survival now. It's more of what do I want my life to look like every single day? You know what I mean? Because when you get out of that survival mode, um, it just opens up your mind to other things besides just surviving. So that's a little bit about me. Decided to leave corporate America about 4 years ago. It's been about 4 years now.
Mhm.
Decided to go into business, learned a lot about business leadership, sales skills, things like that. And here we are today. Now I'm helping a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs, making sure that they're learning about finances. Um, they're financially literate when it comes to tax laws and what they can and can't do. Helping them organize their finances because most of the time entrepreneurs are not, that's not their it's not their background. They're good at making the money, but sometimes they're not good at keeping it.
Right.
So that's kind of, what we do now in a nutshell.
Okay, that's great. So we're definitely, going to touch on some of those points. And I know with you being a businesswoman, you don't have one, you don't have two, but you have three businesses. Third one being, with your husband. And so if you can share what those businesses are, but also how do you keep things together running three businesses and being a mom?
Yeah. Um, well, I would say that it's more of, it's you can say it's three, but I really look at it as two because one of them provides opportunity to create another income stream. But basically, my main focus is on one business. So 90% of my time is just focused on one thing. Um, I think that's important. I think that learning how to master one or two skills is what's going to separate you from people who have multiple streams of income, right?
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but my point with that is that yes, there's a couple of there's a couple of streams, but 90% of my time is going to one. And with that one business, I do have help. So I have assistants, I have people who specialize in certain things that I'm aware of and that I know how it works, but that I'm not personally doing. So I only focus on one or two different areas in my business, and everything else is basically managed by someone else or completely like outsourced. Um, because you can't do everything. I mean,
Mhm.
there's a space, as a startup that you're gonna have to figure it all out. But once your business starts making a decent amount of income and you're willing to sacrifice some of your profits in order to be able to hire other people to come in and help you, then that's when it starts getting fun because now you have other you're hiring other people and they're able to make money as well as you and they bring stuff into your business that you weren't even thinking of, right? They may have the strengths that you don't have. And so being aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are is really, really important. Because if not, you're just going to wing a lot of stuff. And that happens, right? Sometimes we go into business, we wing everything. But you get to a point where you can't operate on just winging stuff. You need to have a plan. You need to be strategic. You need to know what you're doing. And so being able to hire other people to come in and help you with stuff is definitely important. The other business is, with my husband, um, which in that business, probably like 5% of my time. He pretty much can operate it on his own. I do obviously, I'm the one that's most building the relationships with the, real estate professionals and things like that. And, making sure that the social media presence is there and things like that. But thankfully, that business doesn't require, at this point, a lot of my time. I do see that shifting though within the next 6 months to a year because of what's happening. Um,
Mhm.
I do see that business requiring a little bit more of my time, um, you know, in about 6 months to a year because of the economy crashing and houses are going to be going into foreclosure. So the demand is just going to be a lot higher than what it is right now.
Mhm.
So, to answer your question, it's a lot of outsourcing, delegating, um, being very strategic with my time, not wasting my time. Um, I don't like wasting my time on things that aren't going to give me results. That's just me.
Mhm.
Um, and knowing when to ask for help and who to ask for help. That's really, really important. So basically how I manage it.
Okay. Great. And so now when it comes down to like the bookkeeping and accounting questions, it's as silly as probably can be, but I know before I thought I knew what bookkeeping was, and when now that learning from you, I had no idea growing up. So the first silly question is, what are books?
Yep.
When they say bookkeeping, what are the books?
Yeah. So to keep it simple, it's basically just tracking the expenses and the income of your business. So it's like personal finance, but for your business, right? So if
Okay.
you're keeping track of your bills, that you pay personally, your rent, your light, your gas, your cell phone, health insurance, things like that. But it's doing it for your business. Um, the thing about business is there's so much that you can do when it comes to being able to qualify for certain tax deductions, tax credits, being able to depreciate things. And there's so much that you can do, and you can get really creative as an entrepreneur to make things a tax deduction. So that's the part where it's not just bookkeeping, it's having someone who's knowledgeable about your industry and what, is deemed an ordinary and necessary expense and how to get creative, with those things. So that's basically bookkeeping in a nutshell, just keeping track of your income and expenses. Whatever platform you use to do that, is strictly up to you. But that's basically what it is.
Okay. And why I guess why would you say that it's important to make sure you're keeping up with those, but also I know something that we've discussed is about also keeping it separate from personal and business, because I know sometimes if you have whatever card is there, people swipe and then now you have to sort. So why is it important to keep your books in order?
So there's a couple of reasons. Reason number one is if you're operating as a solopreneur, and you're just a 1099 independent contractor, you don't have no, entity set up as far as an LLC or an S corp or C corp or anything like that. It's still recommended that you separate, your business income in a bank account from your, other income streams that you might have, especially if you're working a W-2. So keeping that separate, um, is important because one, when it comes to tax time, you're going to be able to have a smoother process of getting things to your tax preparer, your CPA, or kind or whoever's doing your taxes. So
Hmm.
that process for one goes a lot smoother. For two, the IRS does not like when we are commingling expenses. And so from the IRS perspective, when you separate the two, it looks one more professional and you have less chances of, having any trouble with the IRS because you've been keeping track of everything. You know, it minimizes the chances of, you know, you getting audited and things like that. So um, and it also allows you from a from a perspective of looking at your numbers, it allows you to see how profitable you really are. You know what I mean? If you
Mm,
have everything lumped together, how do you know what your profit is, right? How do you
right.
know which expenses are fixed expenses, which expenses are variable expenses? And just think about it, right? With your own personal finances, if you have everything all lumped together and you're not keeping track of anything, how do you know how much is really coming in and going out? If you're just looking at your bank account and saying, okay, I have $1,000 in here, so I'm just going to pay all of this, and then you're not looking ahead or you're not planning ahead, then sometimes you can really screw yourself over financially. So making sure that you separate the two allows you to make better decisions because you're able to see what is a personal expense, what is a business expense, and the same thing with the income. So it just makes it easier for you. And then also from the whoever is doing your taxes, they're going to ask you for all that information. And if you haven't been doing it, you're going to have to hire someone to do it, which is more money out of your pocket. Now, here's the flip side to that. Most people don't know how to do it. So if they even
Right.
attempt to do it, sometimes it's completely wrong, which then you have to pay for cleanup work, right? Especially if you're keeping track of, if you're keeping track of things in like QuickBooks or some type of accounting software. Um, but yeah, it's really important to keep the two separate. So if you're not doing that right now as an entrepreneur, definitely start ASAP.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Because and it's so true. Knowing what's coming in, business and personal, really just helps to get a hold of stuff. And that's one of the most important things to really bring. That's and part of the basics of financial literacy, because most of us, our parents really never taught us about money, never taught us about budgeting. A lot of the times it was just bills, 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 or no, you can't have this or you can't have that. So it's about learning what we know now, definitely sharing it with our children and creating just more awareness and a better legacy. And so, when it comes to startups, what are some key things that you would say should be in place for a brand new entrepreneur, especially in this season? I know this is the incubation time for dreams to really come out. So, what are some things that people should have in place?
So um, I would say it depends, if that startup has income already coming in. Obviously, there's so many different kinds of startups. There's startups that from day one they have funding. You know, um, there's other startups that obviously don't have any type of income coming in. For a certain period of time. So if you're already making money in your business and um, you're already producing sales or selling products and services, whatever it is, um, one of the first things you want to do is keep track, of your income and your expenses. You could do that in a very simple way with just a spreadsheet. You know what I mean? Um, you can do that by using QuickBooks. You can use the self-employed version. It's very user friendly. Um, so one is keeping track of what is already coming in and going out and getting very clear on how much you need to invest into your business in order to produce a profit. And that's not always, you know, easy to find out in the beginning, um, especially since you're investing a lot of time in the beginning. Um, so that's one of the first things. The second thing is to get a bank account. Get a bank account that is just designated for your business and your business income and expenses. get a separate bank account that has nothing to do with your personal checking account. So like that, you automatically from the front end separate the two.
Mhm.
Um, the third thing is I would definitely sit down with a tax professional. Um, Obviously right now with everything that's going on, most people have probably done their taxes, but there's a lot of others that haven't. And so having someone who can guide you on, things that are tax deductible for you so that you can keep more of your money and even possibly, you know, qualify for a refund depending on, how much income and expenses you have for your business. There's still, small solopreneurs who can still get a refund. Um, so
Mhm.
yeah, it would be keeping track of your expenses and income, even in a basic Excel sheet. But if you're already producing an income in your business, definitely graduate to something like QuickBooks, so that you can have a professional way and a system to do that. The second is obviously having the bank account separating your personal from your business. The third thing is having a good qualified tax professional or someone who can educate you on how to, eliminate your taxes. Also, how to protect yourself financially in the event of, you getting sick or you getting ill. Um, that's important too. Making sure that you're budgeting, making sure that you're projecting and looking ahead.
Mhm.
But the first step is looking at your patterns, right? One thing I always recommend my clients to do when they're struggling with figuring out how to budget, figuring out, what's going in and what's coming out, if they're not already doing it, is I tell them to print out their bank statements for the last 3 months, minimum, right? If you're really bold and you really want to, slap yourself over the head, go back a year and print out every single statement
Mhm.
and highlight what is deemed as a necessary, like you need it in order to survive, and then categorize everything else that you don't need. Especially right now, a lot of us are being forced to go without things that we thought were necessary that really aren't. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, those are a few little tips that you can do to, make sure that you're looking at this stuff. The problem sometimes that we have is just we don't want to deal with it. We we don't like the way it
Mhm.
feels sometimes. We don't like, what we see. And so we continue to stick our head in the sand. And the entrepreneurs do it too. I work with entrepreneurs every single day, and they still do it. Unfortunately, they just do it at a level where they have income coming in. They just don't want to look at anything. They just want to go. And
Mhm.
that's not always healthy.
Yeah. And I know exactly what what you're saying because that's something that happened for my husband and I. We were working some things out and really getting things in order for the future, and it's just like sometimes those numbers will give you a big smack in the face and a huge wake up call because you're just like, well, what happened here? What happened there? Okay, how can we do this? How we can make it better? So it is. You have to have the guts to really do it, but it's so necessary. It's so important. And so I know with you being a mom entrepreneur and having such an age difference in with your children, I would say let's talk a little bit about mom entrepreneurship and what has been some of your biggest challenges, but what's also been some of your biggest successes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say some of my biggest challenges is knowing when my family needs more of me versus when I can pull back a little bit. And I'll explain what that means. So, you got to understand the season that you're in, right? Sometimes with your kids, especially when you have teenagers and in this day and age, you know, teens are dealing with a lot of different stuff than what you and I dealt with, you know, growing up. So you have to be aware of the season that you're in. Some seasons will require you to have a little bit more um, more interaction, right? Some seasons will your kids will need you more than others, and so I learned that, you know, back in 2018 when unfortunately my teenager was dealing with, you know, depression and suicide. I had to learn that, you know what, in this season right now I need to be fully present. I need to, and it's kind of sucks that I learned that the hard way, but you know, as humans we tend to learn things the hard way, unfortunately. But in that season I learned that, you know what, I need to prioritize, you know, correctly, and business cannot be number one right now. And was it hard? Absolutely. Did did a lot of things change? Oh yeah. But looking back in hindsight, I'm so glad that I listened to that, you know, to that motherly instinct and that intuition. And thankfully today he's perfectly healthy. He's perfectly fine. You know, we have a better relationship now than we did, you know, back then. But you got to understand that some seasons are going to require you to be more of a mom than a businesswoman. And so now, now what I do is I don't, you know, I don't prioritize my business over my family. That's just what works for me. You know, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but that's just that works for me. You know, it's brought me a lot of peace being able to have the right priorities that fit my moral values, and you know, it's just something that I refuse to do. I don't put business first. I do work my business every single day besides Sundays. I don't work on Sundays, something I've had to learn how to force myself not to do. Again, that goes, you know, from having the values and the principles that I've had to learn how to instill. Because without that foundation, you're just, you know, you're just going everywhere. If you don't have any principles and any values, then you'll fall for anything, and you know, it will come back to you. So understanding what season you're in, and being okay with it. You know what I mean? Not like being so caught up in I have to make this work. And you know, as entrepreneurs, our businesses are like our babies. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
raising a child. Requires a lot of attention. It's demanding. If you don't do certain things, you are out of business very quickly. You know, so it demands a lot. But um, again, you have to know what your values and principles are, because the world will just pull you in all kinds of different directions that you may not even want to be in.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Um, so that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is just understanding that there's different seasons of life, right? Like there's, you
Mm-hmm.
know, of nature, right? There's spring, summer, fall, and winter, you know. And so when I went through that really tough winter season, I learned the most. I learned more in that winter season than I learned in the summer and spring seasons. And so now when a winter season comes, I don't beat myself up. I don't I'm careful who I ask for advice and wisdom from. Um, and I make sure that I stay aligned with what my principles and values are. And if someone is giving me advice outside of those principles and values, it doesn't mean I don't listen. It just means that that might not be the right advice for me right now. It doesn't mean that it won't work later, but right now, um, it might not be the right advice, because you know, advice is everywhere, and not all of it is the right advice. So I know it's kind of like a long answer, but that's been my biggest um my biggest learning lesson in all of this, with building a business and being a mom.
Yeah. Mhm. And thank you so much for sharing that, being so transparent and vulnerable, because I know that is not easy. I know that's such a big part of your testimony, and it's been a challenge. I know it was, like I said, for those who are jumping on later, I've known Anna for 5 years. So I've seen all of it. I was pretty much almost right by your hip during a lot of this, but I love how you said, especially with the advice, not just getting pulled everywhere, because the world have every reason for you to do one thing or another. And one of the, I guess you could say, quotes that stuck with me was I once heard, just don't compromise your character. And like you said, like, know your values, know your principles, because that is going to be the guiding force for you. And I remember one time when you were giving me some advice, and you said, think of it like a pantry, and you need to take something off the shelf, take it. If it applies, use it. If not, put it back. And so that I always take that into account, because people always say, oh, take it with a grain of salt. But that analogy, take it on the shelf, use it, not put it back. That's
Mhm.
helped tremendously. And so now, since I've known you've grown so much, when I say the transformation has been such a blessing to see, and to see what God has done in your life, um, I'm like honored to have seen that growth. So what would you say has actually helped you grow personally and professionally?
Yeah. So, like I was just saying, with that season, that comes for all of us, and it looks differently for everyone. Um, I just did a lot of self development. I read literally like every single day. I read books. Like I was just chopping it down, right? And I read a lot of books that had to do with the struggles that I was having. So yes, there were some business books, but I realized that
Mhm.
there was so when there's issues and there's, you know, problems, there's the symptom and then there's the root, right? And
Mm.
I've always been the type of person where I don't like putting a band-aid on things and then pretending like everything's okay. That kind of like fake it like you make it kind of thing. I think it's garbage advice. I think what people need to do is really have honest conversations with themselves and the people
Yeah.
around them, even if they're really hard. And so that's not putting a band-aid on stuff. That's actually taking the band-aid off, which hurts, and looking at the wound and figuring out, how did this wound get here? Where does it come from? And how do I heal it instead of trying to put a band aid on it? And that's really, really hard to do. So when I was in that season of just complete, like it was a bad season. I mean, and that's only one of the things that happened in that season,
Mhm.
right? Which, Amanda, you know all the details, which I'm not going to put all the details on here. But yeah, that situation with my son, was was the was the one that made me like stop and say, okay, wait a minute,
Mhm.
something's going on here, right? What is going on? Because sometimes as entrepreneurs, especially if you listen to the world, everything has to be business. And if it's not business, then you're not hungry and you don't want it bad enough. And it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, but at the same time, what does it benefit me to be 100% business all the time while this over here is burning and
Mhm.
dying, right? And it goes back to one of those sayings that I've heard one of my favorite multimillionaires say is, whatever you neglect will die. Whatever you nurture will flourish, right? So if you're neglecting certain areas of your life because you think that this is the answer, then you're idolizing what this is. not realizing that if you reverse engineer it, um, everything else will come. And so for me, when I went through that season, I was kind of like, I was mad because I'm like, I don't want to not prioritize my business. Like, I want this so freaking bad. You know what I mean? But what I was learning was God was teaching me how to one, be still, because I've never been the type of person that can sit still. And you know this about me very well. I've always been the
Yeah.
person that just go, right? Go, let's get it done. Go. And that's that type A personality where you just want to go and get it done. You don't like making excuses. You don't like the pity. You don't like, you know, people feeling sorry for themselves. Like that stuff, like, it just turns me off. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I had to learn that I was in a season, a winter season that required me to be still. And that is really, really hard for one to learn how to do when you've never been still. I've never been, I can't remember the last time I've been still in the aspect of just stillness, right? Stillness is learning to be calm in the midst of storms, right? And I hadn't learned that until I was in that season. So for me, it was more about, okay, what is God trying to teach me through this situation? Because this is a wound that I need to learn how to peel back and dig deep in to find out what's really going on. And when I did that, it was hard. It was like rough. I didn't like what I saw. Um, I was convicted of all kinds of things that I was doing that I wasn't even aware of. Um, so I had to become really self aware of what was going on, be honest with myself, and reprioritize my entire life according to my values and my principles that I had completely gotten away from. And so, to answer your question, you know, it's hard. It takes a lot of work. But reading helped me so much. I was looking at my numbers in 2018, obviously being a numbers person, right? And I literally in 2018 invested over probably anywhere between ten to $15,000 on personal development, books, seminars, um, things that I was feeding my mind. Traveling to these seminars, meals that I was investing into these seminars. The good thing about entrepreneurship, it was all a tax deduction.
Yeah.
So, although I invested ten to $15,000 in myself, which is the greatest investment you will ever make,
Yeah.
um, it taught me so much. And that now I'm like excited, like, how much am I going to invest this year into my own personal development, into seminars, into coaching, or whatever it is, right? And now I'm like, I need to triple that number. I need to quadruple that number, right? It's all a tax deduction anyway. So, it's not like I'm not going to be able to get the tax deduction. I am. But that has been the biggest growth, is the environments that I put myself in, which comes to seminars and things, personal development, the books that I read, and the people that I associate myself with. It's so critical. It's just like one of the most important things that you need to learn: who to listen to and who not to listen to. And um, that's not always easy. So that's why I gave you that analogy, right? Of when someone gives you advice, it's like a pantry, right? You have all this advice you have this big old pantry with all this advice. You take it, you apply what you need to take, and sometimes it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable sometimes. Most of the time it is. If it's good advice, it's really uncomfortable most of the time, right? But at the same time, you need to have that moral compass and those values and principles. And if they go completely against what your value and principles are, you reject it right away because the world has all kinds of advice that doesn't work, that is just garbage. Um, so anywho, that has been the biggest growth in being able to grow professionally and personally. And one thing I learned through that process is God's word doesn't come back void. His priorities work. When I looked at my income, when I reprioritized my life and I look back at the income I generated before I did that, it's nowhere near the income that I'm generating now. And I
Mhm.
don't say that in a way to like prop myself up. I say that in a way to give God credit because he's the one who really helped me understand that when you have the right priorities and you do work hard, because you can't be lazy, can't wing stuff, um, he'll figure it out and he'll take care of you when everyone else is crashing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how it's come through a lot of just ugliness.
Mhm.
Therapy is another thing. We don't want to talk about needing a therapist or needing counseling. I'm
Mhm.
such an advocate for therapy that I'm like, look, I got a therapist, and so what?
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's a big reason why I'm at peace because everyone needs,
Yeah.
that sounding board, so to speak. And so I'm a huge, huge advocate of therapy, which I wasn't before that. I had a lot of pride. Oh, I can figure this out on my own. I don't need anyone telling me what to do. Well, that doesn't serve, a lot of people. So being okay with
Yeah.
asking for help and knowing that you need it is very important too.
Mhm. And I was so happy that you touched on that. And there was a few things that you said I wanted to touch on because yes, the mental health aspect is so important to address because it's like just in life in any area there's a lot of triggers, especially like for us in the way that we grew up, in Chicago, in the Humble Park community, with the parents who didn't have it all together. It was rough for us, and we don't realize how much those issues and even things that we've buried for so long will come up later in life, and you may not even know and understand your triggers. And like, for me personally, as you know, when I got married and my husband has three beautiful children before we got together, so I became a bonus mom, and just everything just hit. It was a whirlwind of new stuff, and it's just like, who do I have, who can I go to who understood it? And so when I had to look for a therapist, I didn't one, I went to therapy before, but I was like, I don't know if I want to do this again. And it helped, but it was just kind of like being prideful. But what I found was like I needed someone who understood how to be a mom, how to be a businesswoman, how to be a Christian, a wife, um, and all these other things. And so that's what I found. And my therapist, she's all of those things. She's a coach, she's a mom, she's a minority, she's a female, she's a believer. And so it's been like you said, it's a great, great sounding board. And just like you said, putting the priorities first, putting God first, because he says if you put him first and you take care of your home, everything else from there, will follow. And so I just got word. Let me see if I can do this. We have a question online, and I'm so glad because that was going to be my next question. If anybody has a question, let me see how I do this. We have, so Kayla Peterson asks, what about online businesses? How do you start taxes or even prove your income?
Great question. So obviously online businesses are going to be showing up even more now, more so than ever, right? So kudos to you, Kayla, for um, you know, being willing to put yourself out there and build a business online. It's definitely um, a move in the right direction. Now, how do you start taxes or even prove your income? I'm not sure I understand the depth of your question, but I'm just going to go off of what you've asked. Basically, any income that you've produced in your business, or maybe you haven't produced an income, you still can be able to do your taxes. Um, because as a startup, you may not have income, for 6 months to a year, 2 years, depending obviously on your industry. But for an online business, you want to keep track of your income, what's coming in. And once you're ready to do your taxes, then you want to make sure you're keeping track of the expenses that you incurred to create that business. So, for instance, if you have an online business that is investing into Facebook ads, or maybe there's subscription costs, right? Maybe you're having to, subscribe to different, like Canva or whatever these, subscriptions are going to cost you in order to produce your business or your service, then all of those are business expenses. Now, you want to keep track of your receipts. So that's how you prove that you actually spent the money, is through your receipts. So again, if you have an Excel spreadsheet that you're keeping your income and your expenses and you're keeping track of your receipts, then it should be very simple when you go to do your taxes. As long as you have that information and you have proof and a track record of it, then that's all you need to do your taxes. So I hope that answers your question, Kayla. If you need some help with this stuff, feel free to reach out. I can help you as much as I possibly can. So
Yeah, and thank you for that. Like, I know one of the things we've talked about and I've implemented was the QuickBooks Self-Employed, because it's so super user friendly. It's either you swipe it to the personal side or you swipe it to the business side, and you can attach receipts easily just by like taking a picture. They even have an option now that if you email it, they'll figure it out and attach it for you. So, Kayla said she loves it, and she actually uses uh Canva and I think ads as well. I mean, see, yeah, she says I love that she uses Canva and ads. And so I'm glad, Kayla, that we're able to add some value to you there. And so, but yeah, like, QuickBooks has been a blessing for me. Um, I just gotta now keep up consistently. And here, how about that? That is a good question. How often should we keep up with our books? Should it be as anal as like every day? Should it be a weekly, monthly, quarterly? How often should we keep up with our books?
that's a great question. I recommend doing it once a week, um, because you want to look at what came in that week and what expenses you incurred that week, both for your personal and your business, right? Um, that way
Okay.
you get into the habit of looking at your money. Now, once you've developed that habit and you've consistently developed that habit, then you can go to twice a week and then minimum once a month. You know what I mean? Um, but me personally, I look at my stuff minimum of once a week, usually on Sundays. I'm going through what was spent, what is coming up for the next week, for the next 2 weeks, for the next month. And so I've created a system where I just plug and play. It literally takes me like 10 to 15 minutes to do, because I've created a system that, that holds all the information. So it's very simple. It's just a matter of managing the system now. So once a week minimum. Right now, I think that's good because of so many people losing their incomes and stuff like that. But yeah, once a week, I would say is the sweet spot.
Okay, that's great. And so, yeah, because I'm gonna have to build that into my schedule so that we can make sure that we do that. And so, I'm not sure if anybody else has any questions out there for Anna while we still have her. So I'll give it a couple minutes, see if anything does pop up. But in the interim, while we see if anybody else has a question, is there any book, either personally or professionally, like maybe business books, that are like your go-to? Yes, this has helped. I think you should most certainly read this book. Or do you have any that come to your mind?
Yeah, I would say that it's mostly for women. Um, it's definitely for women. I mean, if you're married, I would suggest you read the book too. So as a man, you know what your wife is reading or what your wife may be dealing with, because men and women do deal with different types of issues.
Mhm.
Um, but I would say the number one book that I think everyone must read is How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's
Mm.
a must. I actually just picked up mine literally last night, and I'm going to read it for this will be the third time that I read it, and I'm going to read it again because it's a good refresher. So, How to Win Friends and Influence People. The second one that I recently read that I absolutely loved was Girl Wash Your Face. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, by Rachel Hollis, I believe is her name. Um, that book is awesome. Um, when I read it, I was like, oh my God, I have so much in common with her, right? I didn't even know, with her brother dying at an early age and committing suicide and all that stuff. So that book was definitely a game changer. Another book that I loved is You're a Badass. I believe her name is Jen Sincero, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Yeah. That one is so awesome too. When I first read it, I'm like, oh man, I need to stop doing this. I need to stop doing that. So that book was awesome. Um, Another book is The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. That book I've read like 3 times. Actually, I have the audio because that's one that's easy to listen to. And literally within a couple of hours, you can be done with it. Um, so Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Um, if you're married and looking more for like relationship advice kind of books, I would definitely read Love and Trust. Um, I forgot his name. Do you know his name, Amanda?
Which
Um,
one book is it again?
Love and Trust, or Love and
Oh,
Respect. I'm
Love and
sorry.
Respect. Chapman, I think is the
Yes,
last name.
yes, that
Yeah,
book is freaking
definitely.
phenomenal.
Yep.
That one, and any Gary Chapman books are pretty good, I think. Um, but yeah, those are just a few. I mean, I have literally shelves and shelves of books, um, and I love reading. It's so therapeutic.
I thank you so much for sharing those. And I do. I have the Girl Wash Your Face on audio. I have all these books. And I also, one of the books I bought, I have to make sure I go read it, and I'm gonna have to make a book schedule for quarantine. But it is You're a Badass I think at Money Making or something. So she has the
Making
yellow
money.
one, and then she
Yeah.
has the green one. So I'm like, okay, let's delve into these again. And so I just want to. There's no more other questions. I just want to say thank you so much. Oh, actually, Love and Respect is not by Chapman. It's by Emerson
Okay.
Eggerichs, something like that. We'll post them. I'll post them down below. Thank you to my lovely husband in the background sending me that information because we just gave credit to the wrong author. It's okay. We're human. But thank you so much, Anna, for taking the time. I hope a lot of people found all this information extremely valuable. And so tell us how we can follow you and find you on social media. And if anybody has some additional questions or needs help with their bookkeeping services, how can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so you can find me online, obviously through my personal page, Anna Murphy. Um, when you search for Anna Murphy, there will be thousands that come up. But if you look in the bio, it'll literally say, the CEO of Girl Let's Talk Money and accountantpreneur. You can also like those pages on both Instagram and Facebook. I'm still developing, some other things that I have going on that will be launching here shortly before the end of the month. But yeah, you can follow me on my personal page or just like my Facebook pages or Instagram, and I'm there.
Yes. And so, ladies, do stay tuned for Girl Let's Talk Money. Phenomenal information and content that's out there and coming to you soon. I get to be behind the scenes and see all of this in the works. So definitely stay tuned. And again, Anna, thank you so much. So for everyone who is liking and following this information, so follow Anna. Also, you can follow me on Amanda R. Sanchez on Facebook, or follow if you type in Queens Redeemed, I will pop up on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, all of it. We're just here to be able to provide you with the knowledge and the information to make you more successful. It's all about empowering women, empowering their business and their finances, and making sure that we just continue to stay strong and stand by each other, especially in these quarantine times. So thank you so much. And we'll stay tuned. We have more information coming this month. Next Wednesday, we will be sitting down with a credit repair specialist. The week after, I have a tax attorney and a CPA. And then we'll be closing out the month with moi talking about life insurance, and just the power that it has to really be able to help create a legacy, and especially during these times. So, thank you all so much. Thank you for staying tuned, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much, Amanda.
You're welcome.